Good afternoon and welcome to today's lunch break with the Rabbi. Today is Monday, February 22nd, 2021. It is the week that we'll be celebrating Purim, and as promised last week, we discussed that we will be talking about Purim this week. So the next few classes that we're going to be having over the next week until Purim, we will talk about the events, lessons that we can learn from the story of Purim. Just a quick reminder, Purim this week begins Thursday, February 25th at night. 6:15 we will have a Megillah reading and breaking of the fast of Esther. And then Friday, February 26th, there will 3 different Megillah readings to make them sporadic and make everybody comfortable and be there that you can participate in person to celebrate the story and the festival of Purim as it's meant to be. And therefore, there will be one at 8 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 4 o'clock. You can see all the information at jewishally.com/Purim RSVP. Hopefully, we'll get to see you and you will join us for the special occasion. As we continue to talk about, or as we start to talk about Purim, just the story of Purim brings to mention the story or the parable or the anecdote, I should rather say, of the Baal Shem Tov concerning the law pertaining to Purim. The Mishnah says in the tractate of Megillah, concerning a person reading the Megillah, that one who reads the Megillah backwards, meaning starting from chapter 10 to chapter 9 to chapter 8, has not fulfilled his obligation in hearing the Megillah, the story of Purim. As we know, there are 4 mitzvahs that a person has to do on the festival of Purim. One of them is to hear the Megillah being read twice, once at night, Thursday night, and once again, Purim morning. And the Mishnah says that if a person reads the Megillah backwards out of sequence, then he has not fulfilled his obligation to hear of hearing the Megillah on Purim. And the Baal Shem Tov explains, though the Mishnah means literally reading the Torah, reading the Megillah out of sequence, but one can also explain this another way. That one who reads the Megillah lemafreya, meaning as if it's a story that only happened 3,000 years ago and has no relevance to our time and day and age, then Lo Yotz has not fulfilled his obligation. The Megillah is not just a story that happened 2,000 years ago, but the Megillah is something which is applicable today, in every time, in every age, and in every situation. So let's go back to the story of Purim a little bit. The story of Purim happens while the Jewish people have been exiled from the first temple, right before they were supposed to go back to the land of Jerusalem, to the land of Israel, and rebuild the second temple. Achashverosh, who was then the king of Persia, and actually one of the kings who the Talmud says governed the entire universe at the time, 127 countries, all the way from India to Ethiopia. He governed the world, and over here he was celebrating the fact that according to his calculation, the 70 years that the Jewish people were meant to be in exile has culminated, and the Jewish people were still in exile. Achashverosh celebrated first, but he wanted to make a throne that was exact duplicate of King Solomon's throne. King Solomon had an interesting throne that was made with a unique mechanism, with animals on every step lifting the king's foot as he went up to the step. An eagle would come and put his crown on his head. And Achashverosh wanted the same style to show that he has made it in the monarchy, that he has made it that nobody can overthrow him. He's powerful as can be. And he decided the way to celebrate it was by throwing a party for 180 days. After this unbelievable festive party, which we know that he invited the Jewish people to, he made a specific party for 7 days for the people of Shushan. And in that party was one of the things that he tried to get the people of Shushan to participate, every person according to his stature, and he had in it food for every individual, kosher food to entice the Jews to come. He had wine according to your age, and of course you can know that he was a little inebriated as it comes to the 7th day of the party. The 7th day of the party, which is Shabbat. And on that day, there was a competition. Achashverosh had all his ministers from all the different provinces, and they were all discussing which women are the most beautiful. And Achashverosh said that his wife is the most beautiful. And you can understand these inebriated people weren't just talking. These are not people of great intellect. Achashverosh, the Talmud describes that he was a person who was a fool. He wasn't a person who necessarily understood the great intellectual matters and repercussions of his decisions. And therefore, Achashverosh over here says his wife is the most beautiful, and he'll prove it to you. And he decided that the Vashti should come and show her for beauty. Now, who was Vashti, his wife? His wife was the granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar, the evil king who exiled the Jews many years back. His wife was known as a rabid anti-Semite. She was a person who tormented and hurt Jewish girls and women, would make them work slave labor, and especially on the day of Shabbos, she would try to destroy their physique, their morale, their beauty, in any way possible she can. And over here, God said that I am going to punish measure for measure to this woman who tortured the Jewish girls. This woman who was all about her beauty, her physique, so vain, and was so into showing off her physical beauty, her materialistic attributes, who she tortured and tormented Jewish girls, trying to deny them from showing their beauty. And when did she torment them? On the day of the Shabbos. I am also going to torment her on the day of Shabbos. So at first, Vashti is so willing to acquiesce to her husband's demands, to come and say and show off her beauty, because she believed that she should be the king. She should be the one in control. She should be the one in charge. And here she had an opportunity, though she was making a party for the women. She decided to leave the party for the women, go get all dressed up, or undressed for that matter, as Achashverosh wanted her, and show her beauty. The Talmud tells us that as she was about to go show off her beauty, she looked into the mirror to make the final touches, and all of a sudden she broke out in terrible acne. She had pimples all over her body. And according to some, she even had some growth coming out of her backside. She had a tail, if they want to call it. But be it as it may, whatever interpretation you want to say, she refused and was reluctant to show herself because she did not look that beautiful any longer. With that, Achashverosh was very offended and upset that his wife was not listening, and according to the advice of Haman, who was one of the ministers and officers, and hoping that his daughter would be chosen as queen, told and advised Achashverosh to kill Vashti, that she didn't listen to the king's commands. And so he did, killed Vashti on advice of his friend. And once he became sober, he realized what he has done, and he doesn't have a wife. He then sent messengers throughout the country and lands to find a wife for himself. And Esther is chosen. But Esther is chosen, and as the Talmud, as the Megillah says, Esther was a woman who from her name we know she was very concealed. She was very humble. She was behind the shadows, didn't make a show of herself. She was an orphan from both of her parents. She was adopted by her uncle Mordechai, but she didn't want to make a big stink. She didn't want to be chosen. Who would want to live with this evil king, the foolish king Achashverosh? But she was chosen. And even when she was chosen, and even when she was going for the different things she didn't eat, she fasted, which would cause her to be weak. She refused any type of makeup or any perfumes. She refused to decorate the outside of herself, giving into the externalities and the materialistic physique. But she was chosen. Kabbalah explains, and those who read my column in this week's Newsday, I touched upon this to be able to tell us the difference of what we can learn from the difference between Vashti and Esther. Vashti was a person who celebrated the glamour, celebrated the materialism, celebrated the looks, was all about the packaging, was all about the outside, no substance. She was evil and terrible person on the inside, but she had this beautiful look the way she showed off on the outside. Esther, on the other hand, may have been weak, had a different type, green complexion as the Talmud uses it. She wasn't a person into the makeup and the glamour. She wasn't into her packaging, but her substance. She was a person who was kind to the core. She was beauty within. She was there to stand for the Jewish people, regardless of what it took. She went to the king and petitioned for the safety of her brothers and sisters and for the safety of all humanity. She was a person that cared for every individual, regardless of who they were. Over here, the Megillah tells us the entire Megillah is named in the name of Esther. The entire episode of Purim, we find a unique concept where God's name is not mentioned in the Megillah, which we'll talk about tomorrow. But just looking at the contrast between Vashti and Esther, we come to appreciate the first and foremost message that the Megillah is telling us, because this is the first story that the Megillah opens with. That it's not about the looks. It's not about the packaging. It's not about the attractive facade, which all of a sudden can melt your eyes. It's more about what is the content. What is the substance? Don't judge a book by its cover. You can, or in the words of the ethics of our fathers, you can have an old broken flask and there's good old aged wine in it. Or you can have a big beautiful flask and there's not even new wine, it's only vinegar. You have people who portray themselves to be the looks. Everything's all about their physique, their materialistic outlook, the mundane that they're so engulfed in and so entrenched in. But they are horrible people at the core. What did they do good for somebody? Hypocrites, animosity, hatred is their line of duty. While they dress themselves up in the beautiful, glamorous, fancy gowns, those are the Vashtis. But the Megillah tells us that these Vashtis also have their day, when they get stripped from all their materialistic glamours and they have nothing to show for themselves. And all they're left with is their evil core. And with that, they're hanged, to show for everybody that the outside is nothing. Esther, on the other hand, who shunned publicity, who shunned all the outside glamour, but was about substance. What can I do to help another person? Esther, the Talmud tells us, had 7 different servants for her, each one for another day of the week, treated them with respect, dignity, and pleasure. Was a person who the Megillah is named for, the heroine of the Jewish people, who we look back and say one of the great prophetess, a person who put their life on the line to help another person. These are the deeds that are remembered. These are the people that, regardless what come they meet, at any time or any age, these things are never forgotten. Every single one of us has that challenge. We have the challenge of being distracted by the externalities of the world, or looking deeper and seeing what is at the core. What is this really all about? Is it about materialism, selfishness, egotism? Or is it about truth, substance, and spirituality, selflessness? What endures is kindness and selflessness, internal spirituality, not the facade, not the packaging. The packaging gets thrown into the garbage, but the gift inside stays forever. God gave us also a body and a soul. Yes, we need to take care for our body, but we need to remember, let the soul shine through and change the way the body looks. Don't let the body cover and distort what the soul is all about. When we focus on those small things in life, when we focus and appreciate the hidden gifts that are given and forget about the packaging, we live a more meaningful and happier life. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Looking forward to talking again and continuing our conversation about the story of Purim tomorrow at Lunch Break with the Rabbi at 1 p.m. All the best and have a wonderful day.